Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I'd appreciate it. I also love it when people leave comments, so leave me a comment. I wanted to announce to people that my ebook is now available on my merch store, so you might want to visit my merch store or the video description down below in order to download it. So it's a great value. It provides extra information about all of the videos from 2023, including my sketch that I drew, the final picture of it, description of the materials, an evaluation of what difficulty level it is, some notes I made about the particular project, and finally a link to the video. So check it out. Today I think I'm going to make a citrine kind of rhombus shaped pendant. I have this Marquise citrine that I think would look good framed in a rhombus, so we'll try that. I also have a little Marquise green tourmaline to go with it. We'll see how that turns out. But I think I'm going to put that on the bail. We'll see. Before we get started, let's thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I love not only the financial contributions that they give me, but also the community that they've built over there. It's a really nice place with lots of knowledgeable people sharing ideas. So thanks for that. And thank you to my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 11,800, which is amazing and fantastic. So thank you for that. I appreciate the really touching comments that people leave, as well as the little financial contributions like the buy me a coffee and the super thanks. Those really help with the rising cost of silver right now. It's going up pretty high. So, all right, well, let's get started on this project. Here, this is my design idea book, or one of the variations you can find on my merch store. I like drawing up a sketch beforehand. It gives me some clarification of my ideas in my head, and there we go. I generally have a better outcome if I do a little bit of thinking about it before I just jump in. So I drew a bunch of different ideas here for this citrine. Let me show you the citrine. See, it's kind of a golden citrine. It's pretty. It's about 15 by 7 when I measured it. So I also have this little green tourmaline here, which is also a Marquise, and this is more like a 3 by 6, and I think I'm going to put that on the bail. So my ideas were, I actually drew this one first, and this is kind of similar to what I'm going to make. I'm not going to put these little balls here. I think I'm going to just put this right up in the crook of that little space there. But that's going to be the one I do. I thought about doing something sort of geometric like this, or something floral. On my Patreon, the theme I gave them this month was flowers or flower-related stuff, so they can all try to do some flower-related things if they want to. And I did a couple of rings a while back. If you want to see that video, or 3 rings actually, with some flower motifs, if you want to see that, I'll put a link up there for you. But I settled on this one, so I'm going to go with this guy. And I think first let's make a bezel for this, and then we'll start making some other components. I am going to make these out of 10 gauge square wire, I think, and I'm going to flatten them a little bit with the hammer, and then do some filing to shape them so they have kind of a taper, and then we'll put them in a nice curve. I might curve it first, actually. This is going to be made out of 22 gauge sheet, and I'm going to saw out a little, it's going to be a sandwich basically. It's going to have, oops, it's going to look like this from the side, and I'm going to mount a little bezel on here for the stone, and the chain will go through here, and the ring, this is a side view here, the ring is going to go through the side through here, and this will have some kind of little, that'll be soldered together at the bottom there, so, and up here. Alright, so let's get started on a bezel for this. We're going to make a step bezel, and to do that there's an easy way to do it. Bezel. This bezel is 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip. This is 28 gauge. I'm using some thin stuff today. I want to kind of look to make sure it's deep enough, and it's plenty deep. But to make a step bezel for this, I'm going to make the bezel first, and then I'm going to put 2 layers of 18 gauge round wire to build up a little step. So I'll show you how to do that. First though, let's file the end flap. If you're going to do a Marquise bezel, you don't want to put the end of the bezel right on the point. We're going to put it somewhere in the middle of the side. Otherwise, it causes some problems. So I'm going to kind of estimate about how far along to make the split where the bezel is going to meet. And then we'll kind of make a sharp bend. I think once I get this kind of sitting in there nice, I'm going to try and make a mark with this so I can see where to make the bend for the second part. Try and get that tucked in there as tight as I can in the corner. Then I should be able to kind of get a pretty good estimate of where to bend that right there. That's pretty good. So when I mark this, I'm going to leave just a little bit extra for filing purposes. So I'm going to go just a tiny bit beyond, maybe half a millimeter. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder and a liquid flux called Mighty Flux, but I have some other liquid fluxes I'm going to try out soon. Just bend these two so we can put the two ends together. You're soldering a bezel if you've never done this before, and this is probably an intermediate or an advanced project, depending upon what kind of stones you use and whether you do the stone on the bail. That's going to make it a little more challenging. So, but when you're making a bezel, if you're kind of new to this, want the two ends pushing together when you solder them, so that if it relaxes under the heat, which it has a tendency to do, it won't pull apart and leave a gap. I use a Smith acetylene torch. It's an air acetylene torch. It's called their Silversmith model. Not very creative, but it's a great torch. It's not much metal in a bezel, so it flows pretty quickly. Yeah, sufficient heat. Alright. So, I think that was my original corner. I tried to leave the original bands I made in here so that I wouldn't have to figure out where they need to go. I'm pretty satisfied with the size on this one. You don't want to have a lot of excess space on Marquise because the corners are problematic already, the little tips of these. You have to find a way to compress that metal over those, and it's if you have too much metal, it's kind of frustrating. So I think that's pretty good. So the easiest way to make a sharp corner in this, if I don't want to use two separate pieces, which I could if we wanted to, but I think I'm going to try and do it in one piece, is I'm going to go inwards at least as far as that and file a notch with a corner of my basket file like this. Allow you to bend it nicely and sharply right at that point. It's okay to have the solder joint at the end on this part here. You just don't want it on the bezel. I think I'm going to go ahead I'm going to solder this end here so it can't flex back and forth and break off, and just to make that kind of a permanent bend like that. And I'm going to use a little bit smaller pieces of solder for this one, so I'm going to cut a few smaller ones. So I do something called pick soldering, and this is a nice pick that I got from Pepe Tools. And you pick up a little bit of solder on the end of it, heat the piece up to the soldering temperature and touch it there, and it should just jump right on. So it's a really useful technique that I learned a long time ago, and it really amped up my skills. So if you're interested, there's a link to my video about that. But here, let's do this real quick. Pick up a little piece like that. Turn that up a skosh. Get this thing hot. Close like that. That'll make it easier to shape the rest of it without, accidentally bending that initial angle. So we had that pretty close there. That's pretty close. So. I think we're pretty close. One thing you want to make sure to do is make sure it is perfectly flat. You don't want to have it, we're trying to create a platform for the stone to sit on, so we don't want to have a curve in the middle or something. That'll make it hard to get your stone in there, right? That looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to make another one of those. So I put one in there, now let's push the other one underneath it. Spend a minute or two making sure these are tucked one on top of the other, touching and flat, not riding up on one side or the other. Nobody wants their stone to sit in there wonky. That would be embarrassing. People would say, "Did you see that wonky stone in Chad's setting? How embarrassing." So what I'm doing is I'm going to make a little Marquise shaped pile of solder, basically. The easiest way to get those soldered in is to just set the setting right on top of this. And then we'll heat it from the outside like you would any other bezel. And it should draw that solder right up in there, as long as it's touching it. See, the squares start to disappear as they get sucked up in there. You want to make sure to get it fully hot so that the solder wicks along the entire seam. It's not looking too bad. Let's file the bottom flat. So this stone has a relatively deep pavilion, and I'm going to stick it in here to see if it sticks out the back. If it does, we can add a third layer. So when I look at this, it looks like it's sticking out just a tiny bit there. So I'll probably put one more in there. So I'll be right back after I put a third one on top. I don't know if you can see or not, but I have 3 layers in there now. So I need to clean up the back again just a bit. After I made that piece, I just set it on some more pieces of solder, just like I did before, and got it to reflow again. And some of that solder wicked right up into the top part as well. So we're good. And we need to start thinking about how we're going to make this part. And like I said, I'm going to use some of that 10 gauge square wire if I can figure out where I stuck it. There it is. And I think rather than try to bend this around to measure in order to get 2 pieces exactly the same, I'm going to use a skinnier piece of wire, like maybe that 18 I was just using. And we'll bend it into this shape, and that'll give us a closer idea to how big of a piece we need. That's pretty close, I think. So I'm going to go with the outside edge. And then we'll cut a piece off like that and see how it works. Right there. And we can use this piece to measure the second one. Get it pretty close. I think I'm going to find the center here. Pretty close. Close enough. Alright, so I think in order to shape these, I'm going to do a couple of things. I think I'm going to go ahead and bend them first, kind of in the middle, maybe a little bit offset from the middle, a little bit to this side, and get them kind of curved like the way they're supposed to be. And then I'm going to pound the center flat with a chasing hammer, and then I'll probably file these ends a little bit. Or maybe I'll file the ends and then pound them with a chasing hammer. I think that makes more sense to me. So I think we're going to have this slightly above the center point, which I think looks better. I think maybe just a skosh to this side here. Okay, so I would suggest trying to pound this around a ring mandrel. You could do it over something like this if you wanted to, if you have something similar. Might be easier. If you grab two pairs of flat nose like this, I think I left my other ones elsewhere right now, but sometimes it gives you better leverage to bend things. That's pretty close. Okay, so now I'm going to spend some time. I want this widest right here and then gradually tapering down to these ends. So I'm going to file about that much on each one, so it tapers down to a point. And I'm probably not going to make you watch me file the entire thing here because it's going to take a while. So I'm just going to basically do this until it's gradually tapered down. But it's on all four sides, so it's going to take me a few. I'll be right back. Got these tapered pretty much symmetrically. Close enough anyway. So I just kind of filed them down on both ends. And then I used the Dremel to get rid of any tool marks I had from bending them a little bit. I need to bend these back the opposite direction now. You can use nylon jog pliers if you want to, but I'm just going to grab these and I'll try and do it pretty symmetrically. I think I cut them a little bit too long because I don't want that to be too huge. And that's significantly bigger, so I'm going to cut these off a little bit. That's a little more manageable, I think. That's not too bad. I think I'm going to solder those together. And then I'm going to flatten these out so that they flare a little bit more in the middle. There's quite a bit more mass in this one, So it's going to take a little longer to heat it up to the soldering temperature. Okay, I'm going to clean that up a little bit. Okay, I did a little more cleaning up on the Dremel. Kind of nicely symmetrical, or pretty symmetrical, I should say. And then I think I'm going to focus the flaring between about there and there. The most impacts right here and here, in order to get it to kind of like spread out a little bit. So again, I cleaned it up a little bit. I'll probably do a little bit more before I'm done with this, but I marked the top to help me to remember where I was going to put the top. I think we're going to solder that right in like that. That looks pretty symmetrical. Let's cool it off so we can take a look at it. And then of course I'll look at it and see that it's not symmetrical. And if it's like always, I'll go to fix it and mess the whole thing up. So I think it's at the stage where we're going to say good enough. And the only thing is left on this one, I'm going to put a jump ring coming off the top. I think I might make this a little bit shorter by filing that off and then add a jump ring. And then we can start working on the bail for that. So I made a little jump ring out of 18 gauge round. I was going to use 20, but it seemed a little small for this particular pendant. And I'm actually going to solder it just on one side because I'm going to slip the bail through this. And then after the bail is on, then I'll solder this side too. But for now, I'm just going to solder one side. So let's do that. We can throw this in the pickle and work on the bail. If you're new to this, when you're soldering something small to something big, the bigger piece takes a lot longer to get up to the temperature you need it to be, so you focus mostly on the bigger piece at first. And you start hitting the smaller piece as well. Even as that was, I still jumped the gun. But you want them both to reach that temperature in order for them to form an actual good bond. Okay, I think that's pretty good, so I'm going to throw that in the pickle, and let's get to work on the bail. So last little piece of 22 gauge that I have left right now, and I thought I'd bail on this. I actually kind of sketched this out. I took some marker and I made a black spot, and then I kind of hand sketched out the shape of the bail. But when I'm doing this bail, I'm going to need to put this little stone in a tiny bezel right there on the bail. And so I'm going to have to saw out a marquee shaped spot just slightly smaller than this, so it creates a little lip for this to sit on. Then I can solder that bezel after I make it on here. So I'm going to make it just like I did with the big one, so I'll probably not show you that, but I'll show you soldering it all together. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out with the saw, the inside first, and then I'll cut the outside. Actually, I might just, after I get the inside cut with the saw, I might just use my shears to cut this out, and then I'll use that to trace a second one, because we need 2 layers of this. I put a 00 on here, and I fed it through the hole in this, so it's ready to go. See if Chad's having a good sawing day today or not. Oftentimes he's not. That looks reasonably good. Set that to the side and go back and cut this out. Okay, I'm going to file this so it's nice and neat. Set this back here so I don't lose it. Spend more time crawling around on the ground looking for stones. I've heard that I'm not alone in that. That's pretty close. So let's take a dapping block. Let's see if this is a better one. I'm going to dome these just a little bit. And then I think I'm going to file a flat spot right here and here, here and here, so I can solder these 2 together like a domed on top of each other. Give that a shot. Probably might not be a bad idea to sweat a little solder on one of these first. That way it's just going to solder right down, but I'll file it flat again if I do that. That's pretty close. Let's see if that works. I think we got it. It's pretty symmetrical. Okay, so next thing is I'm going to make a little bezel for that stone. So I'm going to do that since you're off camera, since you already saw me do that. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my bezel made out of the same materials before with the 3/16. The reason I wanted it so tall is because in order to solder it down to this bail, it's got a curve to it, so I'm going to need to shape the bottom to match that curve before I solder it down. And in order to do that, I'm going to use an abrasive white wheel on my rotary tool. So I'm just going to kind of cup this on the bottom. It's close. I need it to be a little more peaked in the middle, I think. That matches pretty well. I think I just got lucky and it plopped right into the right spot. Let's put a little flux on there and dry it. I think I'm just going to chuck a piece down in the middle there. That'll be touching the side, so we'll see if we can get it to flow around the outside. I think we got a flow. Let's cool it off and take a look at it. We have a seam all the way around, and it's relatively centered. Especially if I do it that way, I think. So I think this is going to be the downside, probably. The downside. Okay, I'm going to Dremel off a lot of this. I may file some of it and then Dremel the rest off so it doesn't stick up like that. I'm going to try and get it as close down there as I can so I can get the stone seated as down low on the veil as I can. Then we'll solder this. Solder that ring closed with this attached. For this one, I don't really want to heat this thing much. I just want to heat this part of it because I don't want anything over there to flow. So I'll just pick up a little bit of solder, heat this only, and then when it gets pretty close to the soldering temperature, I'll touch it in there. Alright, I'm going to clean that up and then we'll come back and I'll probably set one of the stones and then I'll set the other one in front of you. But I like it so far. I just realized that my camera was not on when I was doing this. I had previously set this one, but I just set this one on what I thought was in front of the camera, but it was off. And what I did was, I do it a little differently than most people. I start with the flat nose here, or the flat side of my chain nose pliers, and I'll just kind of slightly push it in on the ends, and then on the tips. like that. And then I'll start filling in the gaps by pushing it over the top of the girdle of the stone there until it's tight. And then I use the rounded outer part of the chain nose and I rub that top edge just like that to smooth it out and push it down the rest of the way. That's called burnishing. Most people use a tool called a burnishing tool, but I've never really found a need for that. So after that, I'll just take it and clean it up with a rotary tool and put a little bit better polish back on this since I scratched it up a bit while I was doing this, and then we'll take some pictures. All right, well that was the rounded rhombus citrine pendant. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave, and take a moment and check out a few of my other videos. I have well over 300 videos now. Lots of different content for different skill levels, so see what you can find. I'm sure there's something that would appeal to you here. After you do a little perusing, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And before you leave, make sure to hit the video description down below. There's important links there. There's a link to Pepe Tools, which is I am now an affiliate of. So if you like some of the tools I was using, they have some really nice quality tools there, so check it out. There's also a link to my safety video, because safety is always the first priority when you're doing stuff like this. There's a link to my new ebook, which I talked about earlier, so make sure to check that out. And there's also just a link to my merch store as well, and my Patreon. So visit those links, check them out, and then come back and see us again. So thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.